No, this is a huge Democratic Party problem. If you look at Democratic cities, they are terribly run. They have incredibly high taxes. It is impossible to build, so the cost of housing. Let me finish, I'll give you a chance. The cost of housing is crazy in places like New York and Chicago.
Bill Maher pulled off the unthinkable, getting CNN's Fareed Zakaria to admit that some of Trump's policies were actually good for America. On Real Time, Maher dropped truth bombs while Zakaria squirmed, chuckled, and reluctantly conceded reality. It felt less like an interview and more like a comedic roast with a splash of real journalism. A rare, hilarious moment of media honesty, and yes, it left the mainstream narrative looking rattled.
Trump wants to sell a visa. You get permanent residency. By the way, I looked this up, we are hardly the first country to do this. Doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. But, you know, I remember...
Yeah, we actually have a version of it. It's something called, I think it's called the EB5 or something like that. So it's fine to do it. I actually think maybe it's because I'm, very patriotic. I think 5 million, we should be charging 20 million, or, American citizenship is worth more than that.
This one made me do a double take. Fareed Zakaria. Yes, that CNN anchor known for relentlessly slamming Trump actually praised one of his policies. He called Trump's gold card permanent residency idea a good one, and then upped the ante, suggesting the $5 million buy-in should jump to $20 million. From a guy who preaches equity and inclusivity, it was a jaw-dropping twist. And yes, the irony was deliciously rich, pun intended.
Now you're speaking Chicago language. I'm for it, but it's part of a bigger package on immigration reform. It's been 42 years since the last one, so I'm not against.
Let's pause for a second, because I should have said this earlier. Bill Maher is sneakily brilliant. The guy has Jedi-level skills when it comes to drawing out the truth. Just look at how he got not one, but two die-hard lefties to admit, on air, no less, that they actually agree with the Trump policy. It wasn't accidental. Maher set the tone perfectly, casually calling Trump's gold card residency idea smart. And just like that, they followed his lead like political dominoes. Even Rahm Emanuel, the ultimate Democratic insider, chimed in and admitted it's been a long time since a smart policy like that was proposed. Really, Rahm? Makes you wonder what his party was up to during all those years in power. Too busy virtue signaling to come up with something that actually made sense? And here's the kicker. Emanuel even took a jab at his own party's woke policies. Now that's a plot twist.
There is a general rule. I had this when I was mayor. Safe streets, strong schools, stable finances. Focus on those three things and your city's gonna be fine. We've gone through 5 years where people became way too permissive of the culture. They were all, which is why everything's locked up at Walgreens and CVS, and that is a disaster. Yeah. And I'll say this about our schools. I don't want to hear another word about the locker room. I don't want to hear another word about the bathroom. You better start focusing on the classroom.
It's starting to look like the left is turning on itself, and honestly, it's kind of entertaining to watch. For context, during a recent episode of Real Time, Bill Maher dropped a brutal stat. The mayor of Chicago has a dismal 6.6% approval rating. That's not just low, it's maybe rethink your entire career low. Former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel didn't even try to sugarcoat it. Instead, with a grin, he threw his own party under the bus, bluntly stating that the left has become obsessed with pointless culture war battles, making the entire movement look out of touch and, frankly, toxic. Then came his mic drop moment. Emanuel practically begged the woke wing of his party to stop turning bathrooms and locker rooms into battlegrounds and start focusing on real issues like education. He pointed out that we're facing the worst 8th grade reading scores in 30 years, yet no one in leadership, governors, mayors, presidents, or even the Secretary of Education is talking about it. Instead, we're all caught up in performative politics and identity debates. In a raw, surprisingly candid moment, Emanuel joked that if he'd known as a 7th grader that simply saying they would get him into the girls' bathroom, he would have done it. Beneath the laugh, though, was a serious critique. We've allowed fringe ideologues to dictate the national agenda under the guise of inclusivity, often pushing aside common sense and long-standing societal norms. Protecting privacy and safety, especially for women, has now become controversial, all to appease the loudest voices in the room. But here's the silver lining. Maybe, just maybe, the tide is turning. Big names on the left like Rahm Emanuel and Fareed Zakaria are starting to break ranks and acknowledge the obvious. Whether it's Trump shaking the conversation or Maher stepping up as an unlikely voice of reason, reality seems to be breaking through. It's a shift this country badly needs because someone, finally, is saying what millions of Americans have been thinking all along. Bill Maher didn't just get them to admit, grudgingly, that Trump was right about something. He got them to turn on each other. It was like a political episode of Survivor, with Rahm Emanuel and Fareed Zakaria pointing fingers across the ideological aisle. Suddenly, they were blaming their own party for skyrocketing costs, suffocating regulations, out-of-control inflation, and punishing taxes. It was as if they finally realized, maybe we're the problem. This wasn't just political theater, it was poetic justice. After years of lecturing everyone else, the left is publicly unraveling, and we're here for every popcorn-worthy. Here's the million-dollar question. Did Fareed Zakaria just have a sudden epiphany, or has he known the truth all along, silently nodding while Biden drove the country into a ditch? Let's be honest, CNN has spent years as the epicenter of anti-Trump rhetoric, with slanted panels, echo chambers, and news that felt more like hit pieces. So now, Zakaria's public moment of clarity feels less like honesty and more like convenience. Was it political pressure, strategic silence, or just professional loyalty? Either way, it's not flattering. This sudden truth-telling doesn't feel brave. It feels like the truth is finally catching up to him. And that right there is what many of us have been shouting from the rooftops for years. If the Democratic Party wants any shot at a real comeback, one that connects with everyday Americans, they need to get serious. That means ditching the fluff, the distractions, and especially the policies that defy basic common sense. You can't fix a broken system by obsessing over pronouns or performative activism, and you certainly won't win back working-class voters while ignoring core issues like inflation, public safety, education, and job security. People are tired. They're not asking for utopias, they want real solutions, not more lectures or social experiments. If Democrats want to stay relevant, they need to step out of their echo chambers, drop the virtue signaling, and focus on what actually matters to real people. Because common sense isn't partisan, it's just been missing in action for far too long. Bill Maher, in his usual blunt fashion, held up a mirror, and the left didn't like the reflection. With voices like Fareed Zakaria and Rahm Emanuel beginning to break ranks, the cracks in the narrative are starting to spread. If Democrats are serious about rebuilding, it's going to take truth over theater and a heavy dose of reality.